Hey everyone, it's me, it's Jean, and I'm back. And this is my first episode officially on my podcast, Authentically Me. You can find it on rss.com. Working on right now to get it on Spotify and to have it on Apple. But that's neither here nor there. If you're seeing me on YouTube or clips of TikTok. I think I already said that. Forgive me, I've done this a couple times. But you're watching me in real time. And I'm about to hit record to get this podcast officially started. So if I repeat myself, forgive me. It's kind of part of the territory, and I'm working around edits because I don't know how to edit. So here we go, hit and record. Da-da-da. Hey, welcome in everyone. My name is Jean and I'm going to be your host, and this is my podcast, Authentically Me. You can find me if you want to see me. I'm on YouTube, and then I'm also on TikTok. TikTok is kind of short little clips, and it's kind of more into what I've been up to here and there. Kind of gives you a little backstory about myself, but that's not what this is about. I am here because I want to give the world perspective on some things that have been kind of going on in our world right now. And the life that I have lived, I have seen a lot, I've experienced a lot, just like most people, right? What makes me a little bit different from some, not a lot, because there's a lot of people out there who've had the same kind of upbringing I did, except my life turned out a little different because we're all different, and who raised me made it different. And that is not to say I'm better or worse than anyone, but that's where my perspective is coming from. And if you're following, then you know this first episode or this whole season that I'm doing is all based on cults. And the baseline for that is religious psychosis and delusion. And we all have to understand about delusions, right? We all have one. In many ways, especially by 2026, with the mental health being so crazy out there, we all kind of adjust to our realities, right? Our reality is not the same reality as our neighbor. So that's why, for sake of argument, because I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a psychologist, so I can't diagnose and say that, this is that or whatever. But delusions, we all have them. Some people might call other people delusional for having a dream. I've been called delusional. Actually, this right here, people thinking it's not going to go anywhere. And honestly, that's part of my delusion. Honestly, I have nothing to lose. So why the hell not? I got the time, and I'm digressing. But psychosis is a little different. Psychosis, at first, when I first started this journey, I really was putting it under the umbrella of more people who have biological things going on in their brain, different types of mental illness, which there's nothing wrong with mental illness or even certain psychosis people fall under. But the problem is we don't know how to deal with psychosis. Most of us, if you see somebody, as they say now, crashing out, and they slip into the ideologies of paranoia and all this other stuff. I mean, our police departments have a little bit of an idea now, but mental illness is real and it's there. And you mix religion with that psychosis. I mean, just look at Jonestown. It's catastrophic. It's very catastrophic. And I'm going to take you through different cults to show or to explain what psychosis looks like. But to be very honest with you guys, 2025 or 2026, wow, you've seen it. You've seen psychosis. And some people can argue with me, and that's fine. But you turn on our news, you turn on, TikTok at times. It's everywhere, man. A lot of people are falling under these psychoses. Psychosis can be shared. Did you know that? That's why it falls in with this cult thing. Is because you ever wonder why so many people, or a very large group of people, fall under this idea or psychosis of you know, these leaders that run these cults, they all kind of share the same factor, right? That's why they get put in that category. And one of them, I know it's thrown around a lot, is narcissism. Narcissism is usually used for stuff like this, for control and for power and for all kinds of reasons. But mostly in cults, it has to do with control and money. They want your money, and they want to control every aspect of who you are. You no longer are yourself. Again, I brought up Jonestown. The reason I'm bringing up Jonestown is because a lot of people remember it, or they have heard about it. You know, people throw around the term all the time, drink the Kool-Aid, which, to be real, is not quite fucking funny. It's really not fucking funny, because 900 people, almost 1,000 people, but 900 people died because that Kool-Aid was laced with cyanide. And so many people I've heard throughout my life, you know, blame them and say, oh, it's their own fault. It's their own fault. Funny that these are the same people that follow what's happening right now. Kind of hypocritical, right? But honestly, I just don't think that they know it. They don't see it. That's how people get trapped in cults, and they don't even realize they're in it for like 6 months. Usually that's stereotypically, not stereotypically, on paper. You're in it for about 6 months before you realize, oh shit, there's something wrong here. I have no family left. They've completely taken away my family or isolated me, and I have no one to ask for help. Again, happened in Jonestown. Reporters were murdered at the end. You know, shot as they were, you know, they started to figure it out, and they started to catch wind from around the world of what these people were doing. So that's, like I said, that's just one example. But today, I decided that this first episode is because of this perspective. This kind of started my own perspective. It started it because I remember Satanic Panic, and I remember when I was introduced to it, and in my particular life, which we're going to get more into that later. I'm going to kind of end it with my story, and I kind of gave it away a little bit, I think, on TikTok, and kind of thrown in there, but I'm going to get into full detail of it, and it will give you guys perspective of where I'm coming from, give you a little bit of an idea that, or facts behind it, to show you that I'm not full shit. So yes, so we're going to start with Satanic Panic, but before we start with Satanic Panic, we have to understand why. Why does Satanic Panic even happen? Like, what caused it? The cause of it will surprise you, especially if you're out there and you like to ban books. I personally am not a book banner. However, this book that I'm about to tell you about is probably the most atrocious books I've ever heard about. It's awful. A lot of people see it now as starts with an F and it goes, Uff. Yeah. I don't even know how to say it. I'll take a pause there because I don't know how to finish that thought. However, what is this book? This book that I'm referring to is called Michelle Remembers. This book was written at the end of the 70s, late 70s, early 80s. I believe it was published in 1980 in British Columbia. Yep, it wasn't even written here in the United States. It was written in British Columbia. Now, this woman, Michelle, was a patient of a psychotherapist. Now, she had gone to him prior in her life for other reasons for therapy. So he was familiar to her, right? And then, you know, she goes about her business, and then he doesn't see or hear from her for about a year or two or something like that. And then she comes back. She had a miscarriage, and she was having a hard time, you know, coping. So naturally, she goes in with a therapist, they sit down, and over time, she starts having these episodes, these quote unquote memories. And this psychotherapist or psychologist or whatever, he decides to, or not decides, but he notices that what she's saying sounds familiar, right? And what she's saying is these ferocious, sorry, I can't talk apparently, things that were happening to her by ritual harm. That she was very small and she was a child. I think she said she was around 5 years old or so, and that her mother handed her over to Satanists. And these Satanists did these horrific ritual things to her, along with unaliving very small children. Now, these are all like in this book, right? She tells the story of how she remembers. That's why it's called Michelle Remembers. How she remembers all these awful ritual things being done to her. A lot of, like I said, religious rituals that were happening by these Satanists, apparently. And yeah, they were sexually doing things to her, awful. And so while this is all happening, right, as she's opening up and she's talking about it to her therapist, which his name is Larry, and I'm looking in my book right now to see what his last name was. I can write you or read you my notes. The notes that I have, right, is, oh, my goodness. Oh yeah, looking for his last name. Forgive me, guys. I'm barely new. Michelle Remembers. Where are we at? I have a lot of notes. This took me down the craziest rabbit hole I could ever go down, to be very honest with you. I'll find it. But with this therapist, right, he was very respected. He was very respected. He had a family. He had a wife, and he had some children, along with Michelle. Michelle was also married. I don't recall hearing of children, so I'm not quite sure what happened with that. However, he studied overseas, and I can't remember what country it was. I believe it may have been Africa, but he was doing research and missionary work. Oh yeah, by the way, he was devout Catholic, and that matters. It matters to remember. He was doing this missionary work in Africa, and he was watching from I think like an anthropology set of eyes, and he was seeing this culture do their thing and their rituals and whatnot, and for some reason this reminded him of what was happening to this woman as a child. It's pretty crazy in my opinion. So, because honestly, Satanism and what happens in Africa, completely different things, by the way, just for the record. Now, this therapy session turned into an obsession with Larry. It turned into my perspective, okay, and that's actually my opinion too, because of what transpired out of this. He was so invested that he not only was neglecting his wife at home, he was neglecting his kids. And this whole thing that happened between them was gross. This again, this is solidly my opinion. It's gross. He was a man who was in power. Your typical shit you hear about that, in the last 10 years, he was a man in power. She was very vulnerable, regardless if she's crazy or not, and that's also my opinion. He was not professional in any way. Anyway, he decided that this situation was so fascinating that it needed to get out. People needed to know about it. People needed to know about this ritual harm that was going on, especially to deal with children. And so they decided to write a book. And that's what Michelle Remembers is. It's a transcript, basically, of her therapy sessions. And again, it's gross. I don't recommend it to read it. It's beyond disturbing. I don't know how it's even on the shelf. It's worse than Handmaids. It's worse than I mention Handmaids because there's a lot of graphic things that happen in that book, and there's a lot of graphic things that happen in that show. It's like, at least in Handmaids, you just kind of sort of get a little bit of a break, you know, to whatever, and you can pause it or whatever. No, this is like page for page for page for page for page. Okay, so much so that this book became a bestseller. So many people bought it, right? And then this is what's so twisted. They went on tour. They went on a book tour. They were on daytime TV, on every talk show that you could possibly think of in the 80s, right? And by this time, it started to kind of, so this book was written in 1980. They were doing their book tours, probably, this is a guess of a timeline, you know, 82, whatever. 1983. Why it impacted us, the United States, is because something very wild happened. This is what brought me down this rabbit hole. This is truly because the story I'm about to tell you carries so much controversy, tea, as they say, or what's the word? Conspiracy. So many people out there have done conspiracy journalism on the story I'm about to tell you, and they correlate, they tie together. Before I get into that, let me finish real quick to wrap up Michelle and Larry. Now, remember I had mentioned that Larry was a devout Catholic? Well, the Catholic Church got wind of this book. And so much because it reminded the Catholic Church of possession, basically. So what did the Catholic Church do? No. I'm a Catholic. Well, at least I'm not a practicing Catholic, okay? But I was raised Catholic. That's why this fascinated me. They went all the way to Rome. They went to the Vatican, and they met the Pope. They both met the Pope. And Larry was kind of the face of all of this, even though this is Michelle's story. He was kind of the face of the whole entire thing. She did not like to be in the limelight. He loved it. A little too much, in my opinion. A little too much, because then it became about him, and then him being the savior of saving her and protecting her. And y'all, he's married. Let me remind you of that. Married with kids. And she was also married. Until, because this caught so much clout, or as they say, viral now, that Time Magazine, I believe it was Time Magazine, I might be wrong on the actual magazine, but I'm pretty sure it was Time Magazine, did a piece with the two of them laying together, like him comforting her physically. How would you feel if that was your husband? Or how would you feel if that was your wife who was trying to get better, at least so you thought she was trying to get better, by going to see a therapist? Obviously, they got divorced. And here's the kicker. The two of them ended up married. Yep, and then they spent the rest of their lives together. She eventually stepped out of the limelight because by 92, it was over, but it wasn't over. And the reason I say the 90s, right, started to fizzle out, is because of what I had mentioned about before. Man, oh man. So, I believe it was 1983. McGrath. I think it's McGrath. Oh, in my notes, before I forget, y'all, if you want to to know or see a documentary that is so incredibly well done about this whole story and the timeline and everything else, you really need to jump on Tubi, because Tubi has a documentary, I believe it came out in 23, about this entire case, this entire thing that I'm going through, except they give you more of a visual. The writer of this documentary, which is called Satan Wants You, by the way, he lived next door or down the street from Michelle and her family. So he is able to put this entire thing together in such a well done manner. I've seen it a couple times because it's really well done, and there's a lot of information. Some of the stuff I'm covering now, but there's a lot more information that I'm not going to cover because it will take me forever personally. He's good at what he does. So go check it out. It's on Tubi. It's called Satan Wants You. Yeah, it's all about this. And it actually gets into, I think it's the McGraths, or the McGrath case. But so before I saw this documentary, I had jumped on YouTube because I loved YouTube, and I found a couple creators. Actually, that's how I found out about Satan Wants You, was through a certain creator that I had found in the beginning that had done this doc. So yes, now another creator, which I think if I find in my notes who it was, you're flipping amazing, because you brought me to this book. This book that I've not read cover to cover just yet is called The Witch Hunt Narrative. It is by Ross E. Cheat. I can't say it properly, Cheit. Now, it's about politics, psychology, and the essay of children. And the entire case is in this book. I mean, he dissects this entire case in a way that is so chef's kiss well done as well. So, and sorry, Sarah, once I find you of who introduced me to this book, I will definitely throw out there, because he's got a lot of good videos too. And he also did one on Satanic Panic. And as I'm looking at this book now, I was wrong. I don't know why I say McGrath. It's not McGrath. It's the McMartin preschool case. Do you guys remember that? Now, if you are under the age of 40, you probably wouldn't. But, or if you're a law student, you probably have. The McMartin preschool case was one of the biggest cases in the United States. Why? Because we didn't have anything in place for children in the early 80s, sadly. But hey, it's United States history, you need to know this. There was really nothing in place to protect children. In schools, at home, any of that stuff. Now, you have to understand something if you don't already. And that is, when SA occurs with little people, small humans, young humans, it's usually in the family. It's statistically been proven. It's either by somebody that you love and respect, that you have in your home and there's small children around, or it's a family member. And now, things do happen, obviously, we all know that. You know, schools have done these things, priests have done these things, pastors have done these things. It's a problem. We all know this. We all know that it's a fucking problem. Now, let me take a sip of my water. Obviously, when something bad happens to a small human, unless you're a sociopath or a psychopath and you just don't feel emotions, it's going to hit home, and it's going to hit hard. Now, going back to what I was saying before, right? psychosis. This is a very good example of psychosis. There was a woman, no, I shouldn't have led it up that way. I'm just going to say, there was a woman who had a very small child, and that went to this preschool. And she, for some reason, felt that something happened to this child in a essay kind of way. And so instead of going, and she believed that it was by not just the teacher, but also by the principal and other people. It's a whole group, right? She goes to the police department, tells the police department exactly what's going on. Now, you have to remember the time. This is early 80s, right? Even in the 70s, when things happened, unfortunately, people weren't believed, right? So, and prior to that, about 5 years, I should say, timeline, I can't really think of the math, but there was a situation in Michigan where a lot of boys came up missing, right? A lot of boys came up missing. As a matter of fact, I'm so sorry. Let me get this straight. 4 children were missing. 2 of them are boys and 2 of them are girls. There's another great documentary, I believe actually, I can't remember what it's streaming on right now, but Children of the Snow. It's a great story. Very disturbing, but very well done. That happened, I want to say 10 years prior to this, but I could be wrong on the timeline. My point is, there was nothing in the federal court systems that was put in place to protect children. Now, the reason this changed the court system is since there wasn't anything in the court systems, right? There were people, which I can't think of the organization right now, and I'm kind of glad because they still exist today, decided to take over and interview these kids. So after she goes to the police department didn't do a very good job. They just didn't. They sent out a memo to all the parents to say, or like a little newsletter to tell everybody what the situation was, and that if they feel anything had happened, they need to come to the police, but they all need to be aware. This man hadn't even been arrested yet, right? The man accused. He was not even arrested yet. So I could go on and on and on in depth into this case, but I don't have enough time. I'm already at a half hour, and I'm going to either call this a quarter, like 45 minutes of a podcast, or an hour. I'm not quite sure, but we're almost there. There's not a lot of time to explain this, because there's a lot to cover. But why this book is important is not just because it describes in detail what happened in this case. It also explains and gives you insight into why these things become a witch hunt. Because I'm just going to dive right in and say, y'all, there was not enough evidence to say that it never happened because there wasn't evidence. But the gravity of this case took 10 years. 10 years. And the man who was accused didn't see jail time because nothing happened. The conspiracy theories that, children spoke about tunnels underground, it's LA, guys. It's fucking LA. It's just like New York City. Of course there's shit going on underground. But yeah, it's a wild, wild case to really dive into. Now, to sum up, even Michelle remembers, it has been debunked. The whole book has been debunked. And it was by the end of when this case was wrapping up, I believe there was a mistrial, it was thrown out, or something of that nature. But there just was not enough evidence. They even, It's horrible. It's horrible on either side, because if things did happen, which I'm sorry, a 5-year-old is not going to be able to articulately tell you if they're being essayed in rituals. Because that's eventually, guys, what this turned into. Sorry, I'm trying to gather my thoughts because it's just so insane. This whole Mick Martin case was insane. Now, wherever you stand, if you were alive at that time and you remember that case, and you know you're on left or you're on right, that's up to you. That's completely up to you. I'm just here for perspective. I just think it's kind of ironic and wild that, you know, Michelle Remember's book comes out, and then the next thing you know, we're in a 10-year, 11-year social battle, because socially this messed with everything. Anybody who was innocently of faith, who was Catholic at that time, because I will tell you what, we Catholics do believe in the devil and demons and all that stuff. So, but when you slip into a shared psychosis and you're calling your teachers or that person is a devil or that person is evil, and you're slipping into psychosis, I'm sorry, my friends, but that's just, you know, we Catholics believe in purgatory. Some of us do, some of us don't. It put a war on Satanism. Now, a lot of people will be like, oh, good, blah, blah, blah. Well, let me tell you something, guys. Let me tell you the secret about Satanists. 98% of them are atheists. Yep. Sorry to break that to you. Satanists, the only reason they carry that name is for shock. And I'm being completely serious. There's a whole other sect of people of what you call, like, how do I say this? I don't even actually want to bring them up, but there's a whole nother sect of people that the conspiracy is that that's what they do, and that's worldwide, right? And that's what a lot of people nowadays in 2026, you notice they don't call them Satanists anymore, because they're not, because they've kind of had to prove themselves way back in the 80s and 90s, and then they had to redo it all over again when QAnon stepped in. But you just don't mess with them. Just leave them alone, man. Just leave them alone. They'll leave you alone if you leave them alone. That's just how simple that really goes. But my point is that by 1992, it started to kind of fall off. It started to kind of, I don't want to say disappear, but it just kind of started to die down, right? How do I know this? Because by 92, the last year, it was really kind of on top of everything, or just, you know, viral by that point. My parents were entering back into the Catholic Church after however many years they had been away. My dad was in the seminary for 4 years when he was young, right? He went away to a different state, met my mom, Massachusetts or New Hampshire, and he stayed. He never came back, or to Erie, where I grew up. Now, not until I was 1989 when I moved from my small little tiny town in Massachusetts to Erie, Pennsylvania. And my dad went back to the church that my parents were married in. He felt very comfortable and loved there, in which he very much was loved. Now, by that time I'm in second grade, right? I repeated second grade, so in 1990 to 1991 I was in second grade again. And I was very, very heavily involved in the Catholic Church with my dad as a child. So was my mother. The three of us. My brother, he was older. He was good. You know, it didn't mean he wasn't religious, but what we were doing, he was good. So I spent a lot of time with my parents when I was young. I went to Catholic school, the whole shebang. Well, in the meantime, while I'm there, 1990, 91 to 92, so I say 2 years, not a year, I'm going to prayer meetings, I'm going to church every day because I'm in school, and then I come home, and every Wednesday we're at prayer meetings, every Saturday we're in the church. I sing choir, so I was also having choir practice. And my parents started to regulate things. I started to meet friends, right? My brother started to meet some friends, and what does my brother's friends listen to? Heavy metal. They listen to a lot of Pantera, they listen to Ozzy Osbourne, Twisted Sister, the whole 80s hair metal shit, right? Which is my number one love, by the way, because of this. But in that moment, it wasn't. Because after school, we would go to some people's houses, right? Some people part of the church, and they would take the littles, and we would go into a separate room, and when we get sat down, and we would watch videos. Videos I now know, I've seen a couple of them since, and I think they're absolutely hilarious, but it's the whole classic playing music backwards and saying, this means that, or, this means Satan's going to take you to hell, and all this other crap. Well, I'm 8 or 9, right? I'm 9 years old, and it terrified the shit out of me. I already grew up in a haunted house. If you watch my other video, you would know that. So, yeah, I had a haunted house on top of, all that other stuff. I was scared. So, what do? I go and destroy an entire garbage bag of cassette tapes that my brother's friends gave me because they thought, hey, this small child likes some heavy metal. That's pretty kick-ass shit. Yeah, no. They regretted it, I'm sure. Sitting in the back of a van of a kid I had a crush on when I was a child, and his dad obviously is driving, I'm 10, and AC/DC comes on, and I think it was Highway to Hell. And I started plugging my ears and rocking back and forth and saying, I'm not allowed to listen to this. Yeah, I didn't celebrate Halloween the last years of my life, or last years of my childhood, I should say, because I wasn't allowed. Halloween was no longer allowed, certain music wasn't allowed, and that was that. My parents were strict, and if you knew me growing up, you would know that I spent most of my life grounded. Why? Because by the time I was 14, I was done. And my dad gave me the best advice I could ever ask for. And that advice is what is bringing me to do this. When I came to my dad and I told him I didn't want to be Catholic anymore, that I was over it, I was tired, I didn't want to go to church anymore, I just wanted to hang out with my friends, and I just wanted to be a normal girl. He didn't take it very well at first. Words were exchanged, and then he stopped. And then he said, you know what? I'm going to tell you the same thing I told your brother. I said, what is that? I was very upset. And he said, I want you to go out and research all religions, all world religions, every single one of them. The only thing that would make me happy is if you find one. Basically, he was asking me to just believe in something and to not be an atheist, which there's no way I could ever be an atheist because I always knew something was out there. No offense to atheists. It's an inner thing. Either you get called or you don't, and that's why I'm not an atheist. My faith has been shaken I don't know how many times, but I never lost it. So that is why I am here. I am here for perspective because I did just that. There's a few I don't remember. I may get some of them confused because let me tell you what, since I was 14 years old, I really opened books, and this is a long before the internet, long before easy access of information. I talked to people. I met people. Of course, my parents didn't know about that aspect of me at that time, of meeting, I wasn't exactly going to come home and be like, Dad, I met a Satanist, and they're not evil, that I wasn't, I wasn't trying to be that much of a rebel. But later on, I've met them here and there and whatever. I've had more bad experiences with overly religious Christians than I ever have with them. So say what the hell you want. Same thing with pagans. I know lots and lots and lots of pagans. I actually have some pagan beliefs. So that is me, and this is the story. No, for real though. I hope you join me for the next episode. And the next episode, I'm really going to get more into the McGrath. I'm sorry, McMartin. I don't know where McGrath comes from. McMartin. And then I'm going to roll into other things. So that will wrap that up. Besides, there might be some things that I'm forgetting that I'll just kind of share with you next time. So, yeah, I hope all of you found it interesting. I hope to hear and see more of you. And until then, remember, as I always say on my TikTok channel, stay you. Be authentically you. 24/7, 7 days a week, no matter how that looks like. Just be you, okay? Cheers. Much love, guys.